Hello everyone and welcome to another video on Angular Shopping Cart UI. In this video, we are going to go for the reactive forms, and the use case that we are going to go with is the register form. Some people also call it a model driven form. As per the last video, you may recall that whenever we want to choose a form handling mechanism out of the two of them, that is either template driven form or model driven form, we should always try and prefer going for the model driven forms, and that poses a lot of benefit. One of the benefits is that it would allow you to go with unit testing really well, and template driven forms are actually some things that might hinder unit testing as far as Angular is concerned. Also, the reactive forms or the model driven forms actually follow the core nature of Angular, that is the reactive nature. As far as any Angular project is concerned, Angular itself is reactive in nature. So without further delay, let's get started. Let me open up my project. I would like to start my JSON server first. And I would open this up in my editor. And at the same time, let me go for an ng serve. All right, compiled successfully. Let us open up our browser, localhost 4200. This should take us to the shop page as usual. Now, we already have the login form created. We would like to go for the register form, and I may like to just copy and paste whatever there is inside the login form and add up certain more controls to it. So let's first just do that, and then let's see what we are actually going to go for topic wise. So let me just copy this whole thing and go into the register component HTML. And as far as the register form is concerned, first off, we don't need the remember me. Let's just get rid of this. And we would need the password though. We would need the username, yes. First of all, let me just get rid of anything that we did as far as the template driven forms are concerned. So this ng submit goes, it'll come back in a while. What else? Instead of login here, I can go with register here. And for ID class is fine. I would like to use ng class, but not at this point. So I'll just get rid of this. I would not want the name. I don't want the template variable or ng model or even required. So you would see that model driven form has a different way of going for validations. I would like to still have the span class invalid feedback because I want to display the errors. Password, we'll just get rid of the name. The class would stay. ng class would go. Though it would be like the is invalid would come back in a while, but at this point we'll just get rid of this, and we don't need the template variable again, we don't need the ng model, and again the validation is not something that we'd be doing here. So that and the span with the class invalid feedback still stays. All right, we don't need the disabled attribute as far as the button is concerned, so I'll get rid of that, and the login button becomes register. All right, let me close this down for a while. So I don't see anything related to the template driven form at this point. So let's just get some controls replicated. So what I need as far as login is concerned is that I need the name of the user. Go for name, and then I would need an email. So it'll be basically name, email, username, password, and confirm password. So name, email, and just one thing here, like if we think about the error messages, email can't be blank certainly is one of the error messages that we want to show. However, there would also be one validation for the email where we would like to check whether the email pattern is valid or not. So email can't be blank and email must be valid. So these are the two error messages that we want to eventually show. As of now, we would like to just go with input ID email, and I would go for the type to be email as well. And we would have the username, of course, password has to be there. And we would also like to have a confirm password box or confirm password input. So confirm password. So here the error message might be like passwords must match. Something like this. Of course, we'll not be seeing any of the error messages right away. That is because of Bootstrap. And I think this seems okay. So let's just check the output. All right, looks okay. And now we'd like to convert this one to a reactive form. So let's do that. Now, before we move into coding, we should just understand some things about the model-driven form. As opposed to the template-driven form, the model-driven forms are handled by the class of the component. So the coding of the form would start from the class of the component where we would be preparing our form, or we may also call it building our form. And in order to do that, we would be going for certain components and certain helpers from the reactive forms module. So let's just list those things down and see what we would be using essentially. So as far as the modules are concerned, we would also be including one more module here, reactive forms module. And the directives that are available as far as reactive forms module is concerned are form control, form group, form control name, and ng submit, of course, would be there. So we can start with these three and then let's see how things go. Other than that, all these like touched, untouched and all would be there. However, there are certain methods that we would like to go with. One of the methods would be reactive forms methods, or reactive form methods, we may call it. One of it would be has error. One of it would be get. And then there would be all these form properties that we saw: touched, untouched, valid, invalid, value, status, and so on and so forth. Also, there are certain classes that reactive forms use. One of them is form group. There is a form control class available, and then there is a form builder. Now, form builder itself, it's an injectable. So let's see how that also helps us. So form group, form control, and form builder are the ones that we would be using. So first off, let's start with the app module, where we would be going for the reactive forms module. We will be registering it in the imports array. So app.module.ts. So forms module and reactive forms module, both are the ones that are available in Angular forms. So reactive forms module would be the one that we will be registering inside the imports array. Something like this. And we would like to go into the register form component. And here, I would first like to just give you a basic idea on the form control, and then we would talk about the form group, and then we would go for the eventual mechanism that how we generally build the form with the help of form builder. But in order to use the form builder effectively, we would like to know what is going on in the background. All right, so for that we would start with the form control and then a form group, but eventually we'll take that whole thing off and we would go for just the form builder. All right, so let's first start with the form control. So here is how I create a single form control. I would import a form control from Angular forms. And for now, I'll just make the name of my form, that is the name element itself, my form control. That is this one, the input ID name. So in that case, let's just call it a property called name. I mean, you don't have to give it the same name as the control that you're intending it to. Name would be a form control, and we can go for a new form control over here, but a good way to go for it is in the ng on init. So basically what we are trying to do here is, after my view renders, I would like to build my form control or form group or even the form builder. So we'd go with something like this. This dot name is equal to new form control, like so. And the form control constructor itself expects one argument. I'll start it with a blank, and this basically, it's the default value of the form control that you want. So once this whole form control is implemented in the name, I would try to change this and see if the name reflects that particular value in the form control or not. So we would like to now go into the register component.html, and I can use the directive that is form control and do a property binding and bind it with the name property of my component. So here what I'm doing is, the control that I created inside my class is now bound to the input that we have over here. And as of now, you'd see that it would not show you anything, and it would also not give you any error. If I do an inspect element, you'll see that no errors at all in the console, everything is okay. However, if I try to add some value, that is the initial value to this particular form control, like say John Doe, at that point what I can expect is the input that we have over here should give us that same value. So let's see. Yep, and you can see that it gives you that same value altogether. So here we can easily conclude that the control that we created over here, and we created a new instance of that particular control itself in the ng on init method, is successfully bound to this particular input. Whatever you change inside the input would go into the control as well. So let's test that. If I have a register method, and if I do a console.log of this.name inside this register method, and let's go for that ng submit of the form. So ng submit is equal to register, and once we do that, we should definitely get John Doe written over here. And if I just type in something 1 2 3 4, for example, I should get a form control. I think I may get the value. Yep, you can see that the value that I now have in my form control is John Doe 1 2 3 4. So you see that there is a two-way binding created, and that is all because of the form control that we create in here. Now, in order to get the rest of the controls done, this seems very straightforward. We can go for name, email, username, password, confirm password, all of them, and that thing can successfully work, by the way. However, there is something that we can do where we can group all the form controls, and in order to do that, we'd go for the form group. And if we are going for the form group, we actually don't need name over here. We can get rid of the name. What I can do instead is go for register form to be form group. In the ng on init, I can build my form. So it'll be something like this dot register form is equal to new form group, The form group would accept an object, and the object basically would be a key value pair, of which the key would represent the control name and the value would be a form control generated by the new keyword. So it'll be something like name is new form control, and let's just type in some name, John Doe. Email new form control, john@gmail.com. Username new form control, john.d. Password new form control something, and confirm password new form control something else. As of now, it actually doesn't matter. Oh, I missed the colon. So as of now, it actually doesn't matter what the passwords would be, like if the passwords match or if the email is a valid email or anything like that, or maybe if all these things are required. Doesn't actually matter. We have not added those validations yet. We would do that soon. However, this is the register form that I have built, and that is where I have grouped all the form controls together. As soon as I do that, I should be able to do something like this: console.log this.register form. And the register form would have so many parameters, out of which value is something that is interesting for us. It would have all the parameters or all the properties that are these, like touched, untouched, valid, invalid. Everything would be there, out of which the value is something that interests us. So we would keep the value property in here just to log things on the console. Now, once we do this, we would be able to have this form created as a model driven form with the form group directive. So form group should be a property binding is equal to register form. So as opposed to the template driven forms, there's no template variable or anything like that created. It is just this form group directive and the property that you have created in the model, that is register form. So this form technically now it's the register form, and all the controls can be assigned each and every key that we have created, like name, email, username, password, and confirm password. These keys, remember, they don't have to be the same as the IDs that we provide in here. They're like totally unrelated, but I always like to keep those things same. All right, so here, instead of doing a property binding this time, it would be something like form control name is equal to name. And once I do that, I should get again in the register form John Doe displayed in the name. Let's go with email as well. This becomes really easy now. As soon as we assign all the form control names, those values that we have set by default in the register forms form group would be reflected in each and every form control. Cannot find name with confirm password, probably a typo. Yep, there is a typo in here, and that should do it. Yep, you can see that everything is now filled in. Say for example, if I just write the username to be John D1234, what I should get as the value is indeed John D1234. So basically these are all reactive. I mean, whatever you type in inside the inputs would also be reflected in the value of the register form while you go for the submit button. All right, so this is basically it. You can actually live with this, and this is how a form group can work. However, traditionally programmers go with something called a form builder, which is quite clean as far as the syntax is concerned. So we would like to go with the form builder. Once that is done, we would also like to go with the error display. So the form builder is something that we can import again from Angular Forms. And the form builder itself, it's an injectable. So basically you would do a dependency injection in the constructor like we do for the services. So private builder is form builder. All right. And instead of this new form group, we can do something like this. Well, actually, I'll delete everything. And we do something like this dot builder dot group, and group accepts a config object, and that'll be basically the key value pair. Same thing, name. However, the default values now would be directly the values of that particular key. So you don't have to do new form control like you did with the form group creation. The new form control basically happens in the background inside this particular builder.group method. So name, email can be blank, username can be blank, password can be blank, and confirm password can be blank. So you can see that this adds a bit of a clean nature to the code that we have, and it gives you the same effect. Also, I would like to do one more thing. I'd like to just keep this ng on init as less cluttered as possible. So I would go with something like build form, and in that build form I'd go with this particular method, and in the ng on init I'll just call in this dot build form. This looks better because ng on init potentially could have so many other things in it, so we'll just keep these things separate. Now at this point, again, no errors shown whatsoever. We would like to go for some testing here. Our template is all okay, it's all ready, so I'll just give some name. These are all the default values that we are trying to go for. All right, and as soon as I save it, and if I check my output, you'd see that I get the default values displayed in here. So basically this builder is giving us the same effect that a form group would give us. Now let's get rid of everything else. Let's keep the default values as they are, and that's basically what we have to go for. And the next step that we would like to do is the validation. Now we observed in the template driven forms that the validations were done inside the template. However, you might have guessed it that the model driven forms validations are done in the class itself. So basically it's the class that drives the whole form, or maybe we can call the register form its model that drives the whole form. So we would like to go for validations in here along with all the values that we have provided. So for validation, there is an include that we would have to go for, which is the validators from Angular Forms. Validators itself has so many pre-built validations available. One of them is required. So say for example, if I want name to be required, I would do something like this. I would first of all pass the value in an array. The first element of the array, it's the default value of the control. The second element of the array would be the validation. So what I need is the name should be required. So it'll be something like validators dot required. As soon as you do a dot, you would see so many options there available. However, I'll go with required. Similarly, I would like to go for the validation for the email. However, inside email, there are two validations that we'd have to do. One is that the email is required, and the second one is that the email should be a valid email. All right, the pattern must be valid. So in case of two validators, or basically in case of multiple validators, the second argument would be also an array in which we can pass in any number of validators that we want. So basically validators dot required would be one, and validators dot email would be the second one. So basically this means that we want it to be a valid email. Username is just having one validation, that is validators dot required. Password, again we have one validation, that is validators dot required. And confirm password, we would like to have this confirm password to be matching with this password over here. However, that validation itself, it's a custom validation because there's nothing pre-built that would tell Angular that this confirm password and the password should match. So it is something that we'll be building as a custom validator. And moreover, it is actually something that has to do with multiple controls inside the form. So it's not a specific validator to one particular control, but it should be a generic global validator for this particular form that we have. So let's see how we can go for that as well. However, I would like to first get the validations shown. Maybe confirm password might not be shown at this point, but we would like to show the other validations in our register component.html. So let's do that. And for that to happen, we would be using a couple of methods. One of them is get. That will be used to get a particular control, a particular form control, and has error might give us a flag, maybe true or false, based on what error does a control have. So let's see. If I go into the register component.html, for example, I want to basically show and hide this error, name can't be blank, right? So in that case, again, we'd be using the ng class directive. And let me put it in different lines so that it looks more legible. So ng class directive again would have an is invalid key, and the value of the key would be either true or false based on whether control is touched and valid. So that's the same logic that we follow as far as the forms are concerned. So we would go for ng class, which would be equal to an object, and the key that we would have is invalid. Now what we want here to do is we want to get the current input, that is we want to get this name from the register form and check whether the name is touched and is invalid. So it'll be something like this: register form dot get name. Now this would have all the properties, touched, untouched, valid, invalid, all of those properties would be there in here. So I can check whether the name is touched and whether the name is invalid. All right. So what this would do is this would give you the same output as it gave in the template driven form, and it would be either true or false based on the condition, and it would give you that span tag showing whether the name has been entered or not. So let's try this one out first. I click on the name, I do not enter anything, and I go outside of it. And as you can see, it tells us name can't be blank. And if I go with something like John, for example, you see that the error is gone. So same thing with touched and valid that we saw in the previous video happens here as well. So that also tells you that touched and invalid and valid, all those properties, these are all like generic form properties or form control properties as well, rather than any specific implementation of the forms. Now let's go to the email as well. Same thing would be implemented for email as well. Let's just put it in different lines. And I'll just copy this ng class and paste it in here. Just instead of getting the name, you might have guessed it, we'd have to go with email, and same here. So just to explain this get syntax, what it does is it gets the email key from the register form that we have created, and it checks whether it is touched or whether it is invalid in this particular case. If you might recall, in the register form, we have two validations. One is required and one is email, right? So in that case, we might have to show two different messages itself. So what I can do at this point is I can go with a span. It gives us email can't be blank, and another span, email must be valid. Now these are the two messages that we want to show. However, we would be showing a message based on what specific validation has been fired. All right, so we would be doing ngIf for both of them. So something like this would go ngIf, and now I have to check whether the required validation is something that we'd have to show or not. So in that case, I would go with, again, register form dot get email, and the function that we saw over here, has error, is something that we would use in here. So basically has error, and which error are we looking for? It is required. So basically what it says is that if the email has the error required, then show this message. And same thing can be done for valid as well, where we can go for something like, instead of required, we go for the email validator. So if email has the error email, then show this. So the error handling mechanism in the validators is implemented in a way where either one would be shown. All right, so basically if the user has not entered anything, it would not even check for the validity of the email. That's how it'll go. So let's see if this works or not. So I click on email, I click somewhere else, it tells me email can't be blank. It doesn't show me the error email must be valid. However, if I just start typing something, it'll tell me that email must be valid. And if I put in a valid email, you would see that it'll work. So it actually follows this pattern where the username @hostname is something which is valid. It's the default HTML5 pattern that people follow. However, you can also go for any custom validation if you want this .com or something like that available as well. We'd go with the default email validator that Angular gives us. So you can see that we are now showing only one out of the two messages at a time. And we'll be using this sort of a pattern for further showing the error messages as well. We can do the same thing for the username, because there's only one validation that we want to show as far as username is concerned. So we'd go for something like this, where I'd again copy the ng class. Instead of email, we go with username touched and username valid. And it'll just tell us username can't be blank, because that's the only message that we want to show. Similarly, we can do with the password as well. Instead of email, we'd go with password. We can go for the same with confirm password. However, confirm password at this point would not show us any error, because we don't have any error handling mechanism or validation coded as far as matching of the password and confirm passwords are concerned. So let's just keep the validation there, because sooner or later it'll be useful. And now let's just test this once. So I click here, name can't be blank, email can't be blank, username can't be blank, password can't be blank. Confirm password doesn't show us anything because there's no error or validation rule that we have set. And if I start typing in the password, username, email would be giving me email must be valid. So that happens, and name gives me the name. So this is working pretty good. Also, this register button can be disabled as we did in the login form. So in that case, we can still go for the disabled property, and we would like to go with the disabled to be true if the register form is invalid. So register form dot invalid would still work. So yep, you can see that it is disabled. It gives that styling that we provided as well. And let's try enabling it. Yep, and there you go. there's no validation in the confirm password, and hence without even typing the confirm password, the register button enables, which would change in a while. So this is working as far as the default validation is concerned. And now we'd go for a couple of custom validations. And for that, we would like to do two validations as such. One would be for the password and one would be for the confirm password. For password, what I want to validate is that the password should contain a symbol. Maybe I can just write some logic about just having one symbol included, like the @ for example, and then you can try it out with a regular expression, see how that works for you. And as far as confirm password is concerned, we would like to go with the custom validator for matching of the password and confirm password. So let's try the custom validator for the password first, where we would like to go with the password having an @ symbol. For that, I would be creating a validator function, and just to keep things simple, I'd be creating a function inside my file itself, inside my register component.ts file itself. It is, however, preferable to get this validator function out of the component file and into the register component, or maybe in a helpers folder or something like that. Also, we don't need this form control, so I can get rid of this. All right, rest of the things we do need. And here I'd build a validator function. So first validator function, which would be a symbol validator sort of a thing, and we'd be using it along with the other validators. So I would create a function symbol validator, and I'm keeping this elaborate name so that things remain really simple for us. However, you can then later on choose a pattern of giving some names to these validators that you create. Symbol validator. Basically, the symbol validator has to be implemented on the password, and the way validators would return us values is that if the data is valid, return null, else return an object. So the validator functions would either return null or return an object. So this is what you should remember when you want to go for a custom validation. As of now, I'll just return null. And also, to make sure that this validator is getting called, I'll just go with a console log inside symbol validator. And this symbol validator would simply be implemented as we implemented multiple validators for email. So this would be an array. The second element would be an array, and here I can go with symbol validator. All right. So basically, with every keystroke inside the password control, the symbol validator is expected to be called automatically, and hence it would be logging this message inside the console. So let's see if that happens. Yep, you can see that there are certain calls that are already done. However, as far as password is concerned, if I just keep on typing something, you can see inside symbol validator is displayed inside the console. So what we can do here is we can now validate our control, and in order to get the control, this is the control that we get as an argument over here. So say for example, if I do something like control dot value, because this control, by the way, is equal to register form dot get password in this particular case, because we are going for the password symbol validator. So now if I go with the control dot value, control dot valid, control dot invalid, touched, untouched, dirty, pristine, everything would work in this particular case. All right. So control dot value, however, should give us something that we type in. So if I go with ABCD1234, you can see that in the console you get that same value. So as far as control.value is concerned, what I would like to do in here is I would just like to check if the control.value has an @ symbol inside of it, and if it is there, then return null, else return an object. So let's see if I go with I can simply use the index of operator, by the way. So if control.value.index of @ is greater than -1, right, or greater than or equal to 0, because say, the index of method itself works in a way where if this @ symbol is not found inside the string, then it'll return us -1. So basically, if anything is greater than -1, then return null, which means that the symbol is there indeed. Else, we'd return an object saying symbol true. So basically what we are signifying here is that the error message has to be displayed. So basically there is a validation problem in here, or maybe we can also say that the symbol error is true. That's what we are signifying. All right. So in that case, let's see how this whole thing looks like as far as the output is concerned. What we are simply checking is that with every keystroke inside the password, this symbol validator gets called, and the symbol validator checks whether there is an @ there inside the value of the control or not. And if it is found, it returns null, else it returns an object signifying that there's an error. Now, in that case, if, say, for example, as far as this password is concerned, if I do something like this, register form dot get password dot errors. Now, errors is also an object that will give me the list of errors that the password has. We can simply go with has error as well, by the way, like has error, let's say symbol, but I'll come to that has error later. Let's just check the errors first. Errors, and I'll use a JSON pipe so that it stringifies the JSON for me. So it'll just show it to me in a JSON format. All right. So remember, as far as the password is concerned, we have two validations now. One is required and one is our symbol validator that is basically returning something like this if there is any error. So first of all, let's just check the output. You can see that it gives me required true and symbol true. This means that the required error also is there. There is no password that is entered, while the symbol error is also there. So if I, for example, enter something, you can see that now there is no required error, but the symbol error is still there. And if I enter @, for example, right now I'm pressing @, at this point, the error becomes null. All right. So that is basically the errors object. Errors object can also be used to check whether the control is valid or not. At this point, we would just go with getting the has error method. Also, I would like to add one more validation to it. What I want here is that the password has to be having a minimum length of 4. So validators dot min length 4. All right. And now what happens is, you can see required true and symbol true. The min length validator doesn't fire unless we start typing something. So if I type something, you can see that the required goes, symbol true remains, while the min length has some more value to it, like required length is 4 and actual length is 1. You can basically display some error messages based on the min length, the value of the min length object itself. All right, so you can see that min length also works. However, symbol validator itself, it's not up to the mark, because if there is nothing typed, still the symbol validator checks for whether it is true or false. So what I want to do as far as the validator, that is symbol, is concerned is that if the control has the error required, then just return null. We don't check for the symbol itself. So what we can do here is, if control dot has error required, then return null. So basically we don't check itself for the symbol, and once the required error is gone, at that point we go for checking for the symbol. So what this would do is, this would just give you required true to start with, and then as soon as we start typing something, it gives us min length, and as soon as we start typing more, it gives us symbol equal to true, and if I enter the symbol, it gives me null. So that happens. And we can also go with something like has error min length. So basically, if there is a required and a min length error already there, then I might not be interested in returning, or I might not be interested in checking for the symbol itself. So we can go with this sort of a validator. So required true, min length true, and then there is a symbol true as well available. So that's something that we can live with. And in the register, there are certain spans that we would like to show. I'll just get rid of this. Invalid feedback. So one span certainly would be password can't be blank. Password must contain @, for example. You can improve on the logic by having multiple symbols available. And span, password must contain minimum 4 characters. All right, and we'll go with the ng if statement. So ng if register form dot get password dot has error required, and the @ is the custom one, so it will be having the has error symbol. By the way, this entity that we show inside the has error is what we return as the key of the object. So basically we are searching whether this key is present in the error object or not. That's basically what we are doing. Similarly, min length has a key called min length, everything small. All right, so what should it give us is, let's say if I click on password, click somewhere else, it should give me password can't be blank. If I start typing something, it'll give me password must be 4 characters, and if I start typing more, it'll give me password must contain @. If @ is available, all is well and good. So this is one of the custom validators, and the whole aim of having this validator is just to learn about some basics about the custom validator itself, so that we can implement it as a password matching custom validator as well. However, there is a pattern validator already available in Angular, which you can use to check for a pattern of password as well. All right, so now what we would like to do is add another validator, but that validator would be a form level validator, because here we want to check whether these two controls have the have the same value or not. So it is not a single control related validator itself, but it's a generic form related validator. So let's do that. Because it is a global validator, we'd add it as another option. So the builder group method accepts 2 parameters. One parameter itself is the model of the form. The second parameter is additional options. One of the options is validators, and validators would be a function. So what I want here is passwords match validator, and I would like to create this function at the top at this point, but I would expect you to put it in a separate file and include it over here. At this point, I'm just planning to keep things really simple. So we do have a parameter. The parameter would be form itself. All right, and the function name would be passwords match validator, and the parameter would be form. It'll give me the whole form, and what I want to check here is how to get the password and confirm password properties from the form, and I want to match them. So basically it goes like this. Let's say const password is equal to form.get password, and const confirm password is equal to form.get confirm password. And we just check, like, if password dot value is equal to confirm password dot value, if they are same, if the values are same, which means we don't want to throw any error. At that point, we return null, else we return an object. Well, returning null and returning an object would just set a validation, which is a form level validation, right? So one would think that I might go for something like passwords match, for example, true, something like this. But this would set a form level error. I don't want to set a form level error, but I just want to set a control level error, right? So in that case, what we do is, instead of doing a return null here, because a validator has to return null eventually, I'll just return null at the end. Here, if the password, say for example, we'll just reverse the logic a bit. If the password and the confirm password do not match, all right, if this is the case, then we set the confirm password's error to some object. So something like this: confirm password dot set errors to an object, which is passwords match true. So what this would do is, this would set the errors for the confirm password control specifically, and if the values match, we'd go with confirm password dot set errors null. So basically, we're not planning on setting a form level error or anything like that. The form itself is valid. That's what we are telling in the passwords match validator, but we are setting a control error. So we are setting a control error for confirm password, right? So that, and the password match validator itself is provided as an option. So I think this should work for us. So let's check the output. So if I touch the password and if I go to confirm password, you'd see that password can't be blank. And if I start typing something, well, actually what I feel here is that we might not need the touched for confirm password, because what happens here is, because we have checked for the touched condition, if I start typing something inside this password, and if I if I just if I just click here and then I click somewhere else, at that point it shows me the error that passwords must match. Well, actually, I don't think that there is a problem in that. So if I just go for a password, maybe abcd@123, and then if I click on the confirm password and maybe start typing something which doesn't actually match, and if I click somewhere else, it'll tell me passwords must match. However, if I go with abcd@123, passwords match, and everything's all okay. The register button is still disabled because username is required. So John D, email is required, john@gmail.com, and the name itself is required, so John. And you can see that the register form is now enabled. And if I hit register, you would see that you get the whole model available at this point itself. So this is our model driven form, and a couple of custom validators that we created. One is for a control and one is for the entire form itself. So you can see in here that the class is the one that controls the entire form, and the validations and all, they're set in the class. Plus you get the whole model inside the class itself, which enables unit testing, because eventually if you, for example, create an instance of this class, at that point you would get the properties of the register form which you can validate. This, all in all, is a better way of handling things. The custom validation functions are also some things that are cleaner than the template driven form validators if we want to go for a custom validator. So this is a better way of form handling altogether. So this is what a register form would look like, and we would like to then go for the implementation of login and register functionality. We have the login form done as a template driven form. The register form here we have done as a reactive form. We would like to combine everything and build a login registration functionality where the user can register first, and then the user would be able to log in through his username and password. And that will be done in the next video. Up till then, bye bye, take care, God bless.